We are back for another episode of the Disruptive Voices of the Pacific. Today, we are talking about mistakes we have made during dating. And I think we've all been there. Who hasn't made mistakes? And I'm sure many of us would have amazing stories. And there's a lot that we can learn from our mistakes. Now, as many of you know, I love to, a lot of this podcast is about speaking up around the issues of abuse, pornography. Quite often when I interview women and hear their stories, I ask, where did it all begin? What went wrong? And a lot of the problems went wrong back in their dating relationships, things that they saw, that they ignored, things that they didn't know, because this is an area that, again, we don't talk about. So today we want to disrupt the silence around dating and relationships. And here to help me disrupt is my friend Miri. Hello, Miri.
Hi, Tish. Good
She is
to.
Yep, it's good to have you here with us. She's Mary's obviously Fijian, but she's tell us where you are right now and what you're doing.
I'm currently in the Philippines and I serve as a full-time missionary with YWAM under a ministry called BELT, which is Biblical Education Leadership Training. Yeah.
Okay. And how long have you been there for or intend to be there?
I intend to be here for 2 to 4 years or as long as God wants me to be here. I was in the Philippines about in 2022 to 2023 for a 7 month course with a Bible school called BSN, Bible School for the Nations, and I've come back to join as a staff full time. Yeah.
Wow, that's a big move. It's huge. So, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Fiji?
Yes, I did. I grew up in Fiji. I've been in Fiji all my life, and now I'm in another part of the world.
That's great, hey? And you're missing the food. So if anyone wants to send Miri some dalo or cassava, she would love that.
Yeah.
Um, so, Miri, currently you're single. How old are you?
I just turned 30 last month. Last month, yeah.
You did in May. Yeah.
May.
All the good people are born in May. Yes. Your birthday was the day after mine. 30. So you've been around a little bit, still young though. And you've dated a few people. We're not going to mention names here today, but you've been in and out of a few relationships. Do you hope to
Yeah.
get married someday?
Mm, I do,
You do.
but not anytime soon.
Okay. No hurry, hey. No hurry. So you're kind enough today, and I love Mary because she's not afraid to speak about some of the harder issues of life and has been quite open and honest with me. So we've had some pre-conversations to this, but you're willing to share some of your mistakes that you've made. And as I've said, who hasn't? Maybe unless you haven't dated before, but that's okay. That's part of life is making mistakes, but there's some things that we can really learn from them. And so you've kind of given me three areas in which you wish that you hadn't, you wish that you could go back and do them differently. So we're just going to discuss these three areas. The first one was that in the first mistake you felt like you made was not listening to the advice that people around you gave you, whether it was mentors, I don't know if there were family or friends involved. Can you tell us why you didn't want to listen to their advice?
Mm. Mm. Firstly, I believe that at that young age, I had a lot going on, and one of the main reasons were I knew that what I was doing was wrong, and I had such great mentors, and I know they know, and I know that they both help disciple me to do better, to choose better. But then, not knowing who I was in my identity as a young woman, I was just when I first met like a guy that I had dated for a while. It was I was amazed. Like I was just so all caught up in that relationship that I was afraid that I would lose this person because my mentors would they knew that he wasn't good for me, but I thought I knew better. So it was just I didn't want their disapproval. And at the same time, I wanted like knowing that I drew a line between my mentors and the relationships I entertained or I was a part of because I didn't want to disappoint them and I also didn't want to lose the relationship that I had just like gotten into or was involved in. Yeah. A lot of the times it was just based on my fear of disappointing people or not being good enough. Yeah.
Mm, yeah. So, like, about what age were you at this point? Were you 16 or in your 20s? Give us a bit of a time frame.
Um, my first relationships started like in high school when I was 17, 16, 17. And that
Mhm.
was just out of peer pressure. I hadn't really gotten into being mentored yet, but I hid my relationship from my family, like my aunties, because Fiji is a very small country. You meet your cousins and your uncles everywhere. So you try to, in some way or form, pretend that this is your friend. So I started at that age, but when I started being discipled, it was much towards like earlier, like later into my first years in uni and my no, I think from 7 to uni, around
Mhm.
about that time, where I
Mm.
started getting serious discipleship and mentorship and really great people that I was accountable to. And I'm really proud that I had such great mentors because even though I was making really bad choices, they always came alongside me and helped me in those difficult times. Um, I think the where I started to really compromise a lot of who I was and what I believed and what my standards were was during those times when I was in uni. Um, yeah, yeah, it was around that time.
Mm.
And I hid a lot of it because I grew up in the church and I was involved in a lot of church activities like youth and worship and dance and it's so much fun, but at the same time like part of me always wanted to take a step out and just see what it was going to be like, but always covered under God's going to forgive me or yeah, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, obviously, you were choosing to be with guys that you knew that these mentors or just people discipling you wouldn't like. Is that you were just choosing to do your way anyway?
Yeah. Yeah.
Had you told them about who you were dating, or you just didn't even bother?
Um, I think when I got older, not I think, when I got older a bit, when I grew a bit more in maturity, I introduced one of the guys I was seeing at the time to my mentors and without even like I was already in a relationship and then I introduced him to them. I didn't ask for their advice and later on they set me down as my mentors are a couple and they sat me down and they spoke to me lovingly that we don't think that he's right for you. And being hard-headed as I was then, I decided to do what I wanted to do because it's my life. And from that point onwards, that relationship pretty much set the tone for me and how I compromised a lot of my beliefs later on. Um, yeah, it kind of opened up
Yeah.
a world of, yeah, a huge, a different world than what I knew when I was under discipleship and mentorship. Um, I was protected and now I was in a different world. Yeah.
Yep, and we'll get on to that point in a second, the compromising. Because yes, it's, I mean, I love the fact that you had mentors, you had people in your life, but they're only as good as we actually honest with them, aren't they? If we're going to hide, hiding's always a warning sign, people. If you've got to hide your
Mm.
relationships, generally it means it's, well, it's never going to go well. Um, and I think, you know, the big thing, you know, we just think, well, it's just dating, you know, it's not that serious. But what we do in our dating life can set us up for what happens in our marriage. And you don't want to
Yeah.
enter into marriage having to hide things from family, from friends, from
Hmm.
mentors. And I think I just read this week that if your friends or your mentors don't like him, it could be a sign.
It
Like if
is.
there's, you know, people that you know and you love and trust, could be a sign. So,
Mm.
but sometimes we got to learn that the hard way. Well, let's go
Mm.
on to number two because that really leads in well. Well, yeah, I think I need to say about number one. It is important that we introduce our boyfriends or girlfriends to other people because love is blind, isn't it?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes we can be so in love and we don't see those big glaring issues of control, um, or lying or cheating. So again, love is so blind, and I don't trust myself, and that's why we need other people. But the second mistake you said you made was that you compromised your values and beliefs.
Mm.
What were some of the values that you had at this point of time that you did compromise?
Um, one of the big values or that grew that I had grown a lot in was finding my identity, like who I was. And that was one thing that I felt, and I later on I realized I had compromised that because I was taking on different personalities that were his, like certain tendencies, the lying from family, lying to family, um, quality time. For me, I value family quality time, and I started to compromise my family time for this guy I was dating. Another was my body as a young woman. I always had um, told myself, like, because I grew up in a very Christian home, that not just not just like the purity before purity that you need to maintain before you get married, and those things where I started to the lines were more blurred for me stepping into that relationship because I felt that I needed to offer my body to be more valuable to this person because one, he had more experience than I did. He had dated more girls than and then I had been in any other relationship. So I had to make up for lost time or lost like or my inexperience. And a lot of the times I started to feel really bad about myself because I didn't know what he knew, the things that he knew or his friends knew. Um, and also some of the friendships that I valued, that I started to distance myself from because I wanted to keep and maintain this relationship with this guy because he didn't like them, or he didn't like the way they spoke, or he didn't like how they influenced me because they were in a way taking me away from him. Another thing was that I started to, I'm a very trusting person. I started to be, I started to not trust people as easily because I felt like my time was monitored. I had to message at a certain time. I had to always my mom is very trusting of us. She's very lenient, so she's not always checking up like who are you with, where you're at, because she raised us to know what is right and what is wrong, and we always came home on time. But I'm in a new relationship where I have to let a second person know where I was, who I was with, what I was doing, what I was eating. Um, I started to be more aware of what I was wearing. Like my external looks were held more importance. So what the confidence, what little confidence I had before coming into that relationship was completely gone, because now I was more self-conscious of my weight, um, to maintain an image, more just. And so all the Miri that I had worked so hard, and my mentors that helped shape me into this wonderful young woman, was now like under scrutiny. Like, this is not right. And so I felt very insecure. And a lot of those values, like even like family is one big thing for me. Like I really value family. Um, I had to give up my quality time with my family and friends, relationships. I like being social. Now this person is the only person I hang out with. Um, Another thing was, I think at a point I kind of seriously idolized this guy. Like I really idolized him. And it wasn't healthy to a point where the closest people to me, when they would say something about him that was negative, I would completely shut them off, like cut them off out of my life, because um you don't care enough about me and my relationship. Yeah. And so at this point I didn't care what people said anymore. Brought him I didn't bring him to the family, but my family was aware I was in a relationship with this guy. But they hardly saw me at any gathering, or um even meals at home. I was not present because this guy was it for me, was, yeah.
Yeah, no, clearly. I mean, you were willing to compromise more or less your whole being, everything you believed in, your family. This is why love is blind, isn't it? What were the
Yeah.
lies? And again, I mean, heck, it's such a common thing, especially among girls, because we try and find our identity in a guy. And
Hmm.
if we haven't found it in Jesus beforehand, well, it's a dead end street. But what were the lies that you were telling yourself, to kind of just say, no, this is okay?
um Funny, because at that point I was already set on, like, I'm gonna marry this guy. Like, this is the guy I will marry. And so it was okay if I compromise these things, because we had talked about marriage. We talked about kids, finances, and mind you, he's a Christian guy. He grew up in church. He's a very involved in church as well. And so that too should have been a red flag, because we both should have known better. Um, but yeah, start dabbling into other things. But it was that I told myself that it was okay, because we were going to get married at some point. And by that time, we were like 3, 4 years into our relationship, that
Mm.
I became numb to it, that it was okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that yeah, that's huge, isn't it?
Mm.
So what even him messaging a lot again, so common. And what are you eating? And we think it's all romantic. Was that not a red flag to you that this guy could be somewhat controlling?
Um, Again, this is like my first ever serious relationship. So, one, because I didn't seek the advice of my mentors, I didn't know any better. So I went in blind, and emotions are dangerous because I trusted my emotions because I felt like um that he loved me and he valued me. So why should I care about what other people said? And yeah, yeah.
Yes. How did you, what did love look like to you back then?
Undivided attention, physical touch. Mostly it was attention. Like it was that this person noticed me, um, and like gave me the attention that I wanted. That the old me felt like that was it was literally like life to the old me. Like that this person was giving me all this attention, was complimenting me, was looking after me. But then soon or later down the road, it started to change. And I didn't even notice that because I was holding on to whatever little bit of fairy tale I had from the beginning. Because I honestly felt that that he loved on me so much in the earliest stages of our relationship, constantly communicating, always showering me with I love yous and I miss you and you're so beautiful, that it was all I kind of lived for at that point. And then once I was so involved in it, like he didn't even have to ask me what I was doing. I would just tell him like I'm here, and even to a point where I'd be with family, and every like 5 or 10 minutes, I'm like calling him to tell him where I'm at, what we're doing, what we're eating, and it's crazy. When I think about it, I'm like, that was a bit much. Like that was too much. But it really messed with me psychologically when that didn't when what I was giving wasn't reciprocated later on. Yeah.
And what changed? Why did he start out um, so enthusiastic and then stop reciprocating? What changed, do you think?
I don't really know what changed, but I think it was maybe boredom. I think he got bored of me, and because at a to an extent I was being compared to some other people, like some other girls, and I felt even more insecure, so I tried even more, and I didn't know how to communicate that to him, or like really I had no way of communicating that because I didn't ask for advice from anyone, and where they would tell me that that's not right. So I had a lot of frustration, but then because if I showed any emotion other than affection and love to him, then I would either be ignored, um, there would be a fight that happened, and I would always be the one to apologize first. And like I didn't mean it was always my fault. At some point, it felt like it was always my fault. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's sounds like it wasn't terribly healthy. What was the war that was going on inside of you? Knowing, oh man, I've compromised, I've lost, my identity. Who am I? But I'm going to marry him. I love Jesus. We go to church. What? And I know you're a deep thinker too, Mary. So what was going? It must have been killing you.
Oh, it was. I felt like I was losing my mind. I was very calm externally, but my mind was like I was at war with myself because I grew up with some very deep and biblical truths in my life that I knew were that somehow weren't completely removed while I was in that relationship, and it was always at odds with how I felt. And um, I started I think a lot of the times I started to think negatively about myself. I think towards the end of that relationship, I really developed the habit of drinking and just going out. Before even that relationship, it was not something I entertained, like drinking and going out. But it was because it was something that he valued, or like he would allow himself to be a part of. I somehow kind of blurred the line, like that boundary that I had for not ever going out, like because I wanted to make him happy. I wanted to appease him. So I would just, you know what, I'm just going to stand around, I'm not going to drink. And then it led to me drinking one, two, three jars. Um, so I'd spend a lot of sleepless nights just being so stuck in my head, like just so many things going to and fro. Um, and because I'm a thinker, an overthinker, I was thinking of all the possible ways that it could go bad. Like because he's a really great guy, he's from a good family. I love his family. They love me. Even though like I can put up with him because I love his family.
Mm,
Um, I made and really they were great. His parents are such great people. Like they're so amazing.
mm,
And a lot of the things that happened, no one was aware, but it was just between the two of us because image was something that we kind of idolized, like that we were a picture perfect couple. But no one outside of our just me and him knew what was going on. And to everyone else, we were happy, picture perfect. We posted about each other on social media. Um, yeah.
mm,
And it kind of became a habit, like the habit of setting unhealthy patterns from there onwards. I'm always overthinking, being very distrustful of people, of him, or always sitting and thinking, oh my gosh, they're thinking about me, like they're talking about me. Because I was I was very self-aware and also self-conscious, because external, like our external image was all that we valued. Um, Now years later, when I look at it, when I look back and I think like, yeah, it was probably the most superficial and shallow point of my life. Um, yeah.
yep. Yep. And that's at least you can look back and learn from this. And it's really, you know, um, I don't know the guy we're talking about, but we're not wanting to demoralize him. He's still a guy. Yep,
Yeah.
there's things that we do in our life that we're not proud of. These are actions that will hopefully help other people. But you know, when we talk about, you've just mentioned a whole lot of red flags. Red flags don't necessarily mean that people are evil. It means that their actions, and maybe they've never just learnt how to process through life as you hadn't at that point either. Let's go on to the third mistake you made, and that was not drawing clear boundaries. And again, you know, all these things, you know, from not listening to mentors to compromising to overstepping boundaries, they all kind of feed into each other. Did you, at the beginning of your relationship, ever set any boundaries together? Or were these just kind of boundaries that you'd put in your own heart, thinking, I'm not going to do this, this, this?
They were very much boundaries that I had just put in my heart, like it's
Mm,
internalized.
mm.
And those boundaries have been there ever since I was very young. Um, and as I grew older, I started to put more boundaries. But then I had never been in a relationship that I was so invested in until a point when I was in this one relationship. So yeah, it's
Can you tell us what some of the boundaries you had that you'd set up internally?
um I wouldn't involve myself in any sexual activity whatsoever. I wouldn't uh, be out late with a guy. I wouldn't um, drink. I wouldn't be sleeping over at any of. If I was in a relationship, that's not something I would do. Sex is a big no-no. Uh, Kissing was a big no-no. Like it's just a lot of, and those boundaries were pretty much because I was raised in a Christian home, and
Mm.
it was that like one particular boundary was that if any guy wanted to date me, they needed to come and see my mom or my dad or my family first. That was the first boundary that I did not, um, that really was non-existent when I started dating. It
Mhm.
was just, yeah, self. I was very selfish then. I can acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing was that he had to be, he had to have a intimate relationship with God, a real intimate relationship with God, apart from him coming to see my mom. And that was, for me, would be an indicator on whether he loved God or not, or was whether he had a relationship, not just a churchgoer, like a nominal Christian, but one that had a relationship with God. And I compromised that for because I wanted the attention,
Mhm.
because I was again selfish back then.
Mm.
Um, yeah, but a big boundary, and I believe we talked about this. I shared with you was that I had I told myself that I would never have sex before marriage, and the lines became very blurred going into relationships after relationships because I had this like I had, because I'm a thinker, I thought to myself, if there is no penetration, then it's not sex. So I'm in the clear right now. So as long as there is none of that, then it's fine. But I knew deep inside that that logic was very much wrong, or that thinking, that trail of thought. And but I suppressed it because I didn't want to feel guilty.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, so that's one of the boundaries that I had let go of, was just its touch is so powerful. Like just being near someone, holding their hand can lead to a hug, and a hug leads to you leaning in for a kiss, and then a kiss goes deeper into touching and fondling, and before you know it, like there is no boundary anymore. And because I think I'm always thinking, okay, we've gotten past one, two, three, and four. Okay, as long as I don't go past this point, I'm fine. Mm, so yeah, those are, and I'm being very real about it. It happens, and I'm still this, and this was at the point where I was still going to church, and I was still in the front, singing worship and dancing and testifying and being very active in children's ministry. All the while, I kept all of these things hidden. Um,
Mm.
but I was only fooling myself, and yeah, it changed me. Those small decisions I made really changed who I was as a person. And
Yeah.
that's one thing that I never, I hope, I don't know if they're going to watch this or listen to this, but that was the one thing that I also hid from them, that because they would ask the hard questions, like, so how far have you gone with a guy? And I always say, like, oh no, we just kissed. In, uh, but I was hiding all of that because I also didn't want to disappoint them. I didn't
Mm.
want to, I didn't want their disapproval. And I also wanted them to always think of me that as their little angel. But no, it's a lie.
No. Yeah. Yeah, that's it's a challenge to walk with people when they disappoint, and to still love and help them to keep going. Um, Did he ever have boundaries? Did he ever, when you started out together, did he ever talk about any boundaries or did you just kind of fall into the relationship?
Um, I don't remember ever talking about boundaries in the earlier stages of I think our conversations before we started dating. But that was not something that we ever discussed. Um,
Would,
yeah,
would it have changed things if you did, or?
it would have,
Mm,
but I can only speak for me as a young woman at that point. It would have made a difference for me if we had spoken about them or really draw clear boundaries. Um, but then it never happened. And a part of me was I always felt guilty, and I always beat myself up on it because I had boundaries, but I never spoke up about it. And every time we do things or like if I spent a night over and things like that, I always come home feeling the whole night I'd feel like crap. Like I just like why did I do that?
mm,
And every time that I think of that, I always think like, but you're gonna marry him. Like it's gonna happen anyway. But that was wrong. It wasn't supposed to happen at that point anyway. Yeah.
And so you're obviously you didn't marry him, which probably sounds like a good thing. So who how did it end, can we ask?
Mm. Um, it ended because I started the guilt started to eat at me, like the weight of it. I started to internally I would tell myself like this is not you. Like why are you doing these things? Like I couldn't recognize myself because because of how the relationship was going and how much I'd invested in that even ending the relationship I would break down in tears just thinking about it because I invested so much of myself and I felt like it's such a waste. But I had spoken up about it and said I don't think this is working. And I honestly think that God doesn't. I I said that I don't think God values and honors what we're doing, and I think it's wrong, and we should stop.
Mm,
And that would, whenever I said that, it would go back to like, yeah, we should stop, and then we continue. It came to a point where I put my foot down and I said, like, no, we need to stop this, and we really need to seek God about where we're going and what we're doing because it's not right. We can't be fooling ourselves like this. And yeah, it was it took a lot of time, like a constant for both sides to keep saying like we need to stop. That when it ended, it didn't really end on good terms.
mm,
Um, yeah, I think I had a not I think I had a mental breakdown
mm,
um at that point and that was the first time in years where I had like an anxiety attack and a panic attack because I was so overwhelmed
mm,
with what was happening and just felt like what I had been suppressing kind of just exploded internally and I was trying to pick the pieces of me and yeah I really I think at this point I really thank God for showing up and like giving me the grace um and being patient with me as I kind of took a step back and really told God that I can't do this on my own and really had to confess everything one by one, all the things that I allowed myself to be a part of. Um, and it wasn't something I wanted to do because the ugliness of my bad choices, I didn't want to be reminded of them. I just wanted to keep them suppressed in the dark. And that's one of the things as a young woman, like you don't want to deal or confront the messiness of some of the choices that we make, the choices I made I did not want to be unpacking all of that because it just shows that there's a lot of messed up things in there that I just, okay, I don't want to deal with it now. I might deal with it maybe a few years, but it needed to be dealt with. If not, I would have lost my mind. Um, yeah. So ending ending that relationship really was God's grace to me
Mm.
in that pandemic because I was at an all-time low. Like I didn't even know why I was a Christian anymore because my life was uh just the same as anyone else who was in serving God and like who hadn't encountered Jesus. And yeah, and I grew from that um a lot more.
You have clearly grown a lot. My last question for you is, which I wanted to ask at the beginning, um, but did you like growing, you've grown up in the church and Christian parents and whatnot. Did anyone like ever teach you on what a healthy dating might look like or a healthy relationship? I mean, again, we do hear a lot in the church the message of purity and just don't have sex and da 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 da. Da. But did anyone ever kind of arm you with the information that you needed to go into your late teens, early 20s equipped, knowing what to do?
Unfortunately, I wasn't blessed to have people. I mean, I wasn't fortunate enough to have people talk about what healthy relationships supposed to look like. I didn't have the best examples either. And um, it was also like a taboo. Like you don't talk about these things. Like you just have to know that this is what you have to do, but they don't give you the necessary, like I wasn't given the necessary tools on like how to go about, how to discern, other than a guy only wants one thing from you and what's between your legs. That's it. That's the only thing you get. And you have to stay indoors and you just have to stay indoors. Like your job is just to be at home. And then I don't know how I'm supposed to find a husband if I just stay indoors. Like it's I know they mean well, but it's also unrealistic because times have changed. Um, the one blessing I did have was I had mentors that cared enough for me to like I saw they didn't tell me, but I saw their marriage, their relationship, their courtship, and um I'm probably gonna name their names here, but Josh and Noah. Josh was such a great influence in my life as a young woman because he gave me the breakdown. This is what a man is supposed to do if he wants to pursue you. If he doesn't, don't even think about it. Don't even look at him. Like, don't even entertain anything. And Noah was so graceful, like with how she explained it to me, and they were so real with um in the earliest stages of how they began and their marriage, and so they were probably the best examples and that an influence I had in my life as a young woman. That even when I was making stupid choices, it was always there at the back of my mind, and I would somehow try and get back on, but I still didn't want to disappoint them. Um, but I thank God for people for people who stepped up uh, for me, and that sometimes they didn't say it, but they showed it. So yeah, I was probably one of the many that is not privileged to have this talked about in the home. And I think it's important that it's talked about because the world is changing and it's not how it used to be. And we can't keep sheltering, but you can give them the necessary tools and how to choose to make better choices and how to maneuver through life in these times. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Um,
Yeah, no, it does really well. And like you said, we've got to talk about it. Um, how we dated in 1962 was really different 2024. And the world in which our young people, because they see dating and relationships and all of that, it's just on movies, Netflix, Instagram, everywhere. And the message that the world's giving is not necessarily helpful. So we have talked about so much there. Last week, oh no, it wasn't a few months ago, I was listening to a podcast and they were asked, when is a good time to start dating? And the man said, when you're ready to leave that person, when you will leave them better off if you break up. So in other words, you are somewhat of a healthy and whole person. The guys as well, and you can enter into a relationship and treat each other with value and dignity in such a way that if you do leave, you're not going to end up having a nervous breakdown. And clearly, what you went through, looking back now, you can go, oh my gosh, made so many mistakes. And so just particularly for people who are listening to this, if you've got to lose your identity, if you are going against your values or your beliefs, these are huge red flags. If you're hiding this relationship, if you're not willing to talk about it with those that you love and trust, they're big mistakes, and it never really ends well.
Yeah.
How would you, just as we end, Miri, how would you do dating differently in the future? Or is that it's too big a question? What's the number one thing you would change straight away?
Is seek advice from my mentors. Maybe not more practical is talk about it with people that I know care, have my interest, my best interest at heart, and maybe not maybe come see my family first. Like that's one of the things. If they really value you, they will come. They wouldn't be afraid to come home to come and see either your mom, if your dad is still alive, your dad, or if your whoever is at home that looks after you, that they would follow that step, is that they would come and see your family. But at the same time, I would highly advise that you have really a strong support system. If you have mentors, like have them talk it out with you or pray with you. It might be, hopefully, don't think of this as too religious, but prayer is so important too, and getting discernment from God, because your emotions can really have a great influence on you. But having people around you, don't hide it. If someone approaches you, you tell people like, this person approached me, so that there is transparency and there's no hiding under layers of, oh, it's just Messenger, it's just Instagram, it's just a tweet or whatnot. Just be very open and very clear. One of the girls from Belly Camp, I really like what she said, is that she's so transparent with her circle of friends that as soon as someone messages that's interested in her, same time that message is forwarded to all her friends so that they're aware, so that they check in on her and say like, so how is it going with this person? It's just to create a good strong accountability, and it's not just any random person that you forward that message to. It's the people that you know who have your interest at heart, your best interest at heart. And that's probably one thing I would have done earlier in my relationship, was trusting that the people who either discipled me, mentor me, or are close friends of mine, that they care enough for me to want the best for me. And so if anyone is interested in me, um, first go take it to God first, and then come and see my brother, my uncle, my mom, and show your intentions. As the
Yeah,
that's the one custom that I agree with, just to be clear with your intentions.
yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
we better end it there because we have gone so long, but it's been so good, so beneficial. And I know this will help many other people. Many will be able to identify with it. But if you've
Mm.
listened to Mary today and you know, oh my goodness, this is me, I feel stuck, maybe it's time to have the courage to break it off and heal, and
Mhm.
work on yourself before you enter into a relationship with other people. So thank you, Mary, for your honesty. You've been awesome. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.